Hello, this is Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
At 9:11 a.m., the 911 Emergency Dispatch Center in Athens, Georgia, received a strange call. There was no distress call, no screams, just a series of incomprehensible sounds. Labored breathing, feet pounding on the ground, and then sudden silence. For a few seconds, the call left only a chill and an ominous feeling. At almost the same time, in a small corner of Oconee Forest Park, a popular place for college students to jog, everything was going on as usual. The sun was high in the sky, a gentle breeze was blowing through the leaves, and no one suspected that just a few hundred yards down that deserted trail, something terrible was quietly happening. The central character of the story is Laken Riley, 22 years old. She is a nursing student at Augusta University, a compassionate girl who regularly participates in volunteer activities and loves sports. Her friends call her the gentle light in the classroom, calm, hard-working, and full of ambition. Nearby, a 26-year-old man living temporarily in a residential area near the school, Jose Ibarra, had a different morning. Few noticed that he had been arrested for suspicious behavior before and was living without legal papers. A quiet Thursday morning, a familiar path, a top student, and a mysterious phone call. It started out peaceful, but ended in an event that shook the nation. On the morning of February 22, 2024, like every other day, Laken Riley woke up early, preparing for her usual jog around the University of Georgia campus, where she was studying nursing. At 8:55 a.m., she texted her mother, "Good morning, about to go for a run." A gentle greeting, no one expected that it would be the last text. At 9:03 a.m., she quickly called her mother, then left the dorm. At around 9:05 a.m., a security camera at the Oconee Forest Park trailhead captured Laken jogging, wearing headphones, looking healthy, and neatly dressed in sportswear. At that time, no one knew that a man, Jose Ibarra, 26, was also nearby. He was an undocumented immigrant living in a temporary apartment near campus. The night before the murder, Ibarra was caught on camera wandering around the women's dormitory, peeking through windows, an act that is considered a peeping Tom. No one was present when the tragedy occurred, but the digital evidence tells part of the story. At exactly 9:11 a.m., data from Laken's Garmin smartwatch showed that her heart rate suddenly spiked, then erratically. She promptly activated the emergency mode on her iPhone, the SOS feature that automatically called 911, and sent the coordinates to an emergency contact. The call lasted only a few seconds, during which only heavy breathing and sounds of a struggle could be heard. Based on the investigation data, authorities concluded that, at that time, Ibarra approached Laken from behind as she ran across a clearing. He pushed her off the trail, dragging her into the bushes about 20 meters away. A struggle ensued, marked by scratches on her arms and wrists, indicating that Laken had put up a fight. The attacker used a large rock to hit her in the head. The coroner said she had severe skull fractures and signs of asphyxiation, possibly due to being gagged during the struggle. The initial intent appeared to be sexual harassment, but the attack quickly escalated into a brutal assault. There were no direct witnesses. The street where Laken was attacked was deserted early in the morning. However, several students later reported seeing a strange-looking man in the area that day, but thought little of it at the time. GPS data, security cameras, traces at the scene, and the victim's smart device were silent witnesses, recounting every minute of that fateful morning. There were no clear signs, just fragments, and it was too late. A little after noon that day, in the dormitory of the University of Georgia, a roommate of Laken Riley began to feel uneasy. Laken was punctual and had a clear schedule. Her morning jogs never lasted too long, and she always reported back as soon as she finished. But today, more than 3 hours had passed since the last contact, and Laken's phone was unresponsive. With a bad feeling, the friend used the Find My feature to locate Laken's device. The coordinates appeared, but strangely enough, the iPhone was still standing at a point in the middle of the Oconee forest, not moving for hours. The location was not on the usual running route, but slightly inward, close to the edge of the forest. Sensing something was wrong, the friend immediately called 911 to report it. Less than 30 minutes later, a rapid response team from the Athens-Clarke County Sheriff's Department arrived at the GPS location. They began combing the area through the dense foliage and dead leaves. About 65 feet into the trail, they found a shocking scene. Laken's body lay on its side in the brush, half covered with branches and rotting leaves, as if someone had deliberately hidden it. Her clothes were disheveled and an earpiece was still hooked to her shoulder. Her face was bruised and swollen, especially around her forehead and temple. Her left hand was clenched and covered in dirt and dried blood. Perhaps she had fought to the last. An officer on the search team later described the scene as unforgettable. The air around the scene was thick with silence. Police immediately cordoned off the area, set up a crime scene, and called in forensics and digital forensics to assist in the investigation. The emergency call from the roommate, though not a direct witness, was crucial in locating and discovering the scene early. Had it been a few hours later, vital traces and evidence could have been destroyed by weather and animals. This was more than just the discovery of a body. It was the moment an ambiguous missing person case became a serious criminal investigation. And in the eerie silence of the woods, the questions began to ring out. What happened to Laken Riley? Who did it? And for what reason? Immediately after identifying the body in the Oconee Forest area, the forensic team and investigators quickly established a perimeter to protect the scene. Although located near a popular student-running trail, Laken's body was found in an inconspicuous location, about 20 meters from the path, hastily covered with leaves and dry branches. The scene gave off a sense of both haste and purpose. Several shoe prints led from the main trail deep into the body, but the tracks were interrupted by the thick layer of leaves. In the nearby bushes, the staff discovered a large rock stained with dried blood, possibly the murder weapon. Additionally, a cloth glove and several pieces of fabric were scattered around the scene, not part of the victim's clothing. On-site fingerprinting revealed no dragging marks, indicating that the assault and death occurred at the same location. This narrows down the hypothesis. The victim was not taken from elsewhere. The autopsy was conducted the same day. The initial report showed that Laken died from severe head trauma and asphyxiation. There were a total of 4 fatal head injuries, all caused by a strong impact from a hard object. The time of death was determined to be around 9:28 a.m., based on smartwatch data, which matched exactly when the victim lost her biosignal. Notably, Laken's fingernails contained foreign skin tissue and cells, indicating that she had resisted fiercely. Forensics obtained a complete DNA sample from it, opening up an important line of investigation. In addition, there were many scratches and abrasions on her wrists and arms, injuries commonly seen during a struggle. There were no signs of knife or gun marks. The murder weapon was determined to be a makeshift object, an object taken at the scene, such as a rock. One curious detail was that Laken's iPhone was thrown nearly 7 meters away from the scene, landing in another bush. Despite minor damage from the impact, the phone still recorded an automatic SOS signal and its last known location. In a rare stroke of luck, an unfamiliar fingerprint was faintly imprinted on the screen, a sign that someone else had handled the device after her. From the scene, investigators determined that this was not a completely spontaneous attack. There were signs that the perpetrator had followed the victim beforehand, chosen a secluded location, and tried to hide his final act. The initial clues, from bloodstains, murder weapons, to DNA samples, all showed that this was a serious case, but also a case that could be traced if persistent. That forest was no longer a peaceful jogging place. It had become the first scene to reveal the secret of a crime that shocked America. Immediately after the conclusion of the crime scene and autopsy, the investigative clues began to be built up quickly. Although the perpetrator had tried to cover his tracks, the evidence collected from the body and the surrounding area created clear pieces of the puzzle. This was not a random act, but an attack with signs of surveillance and preparation. Initially, Athens police worked with the FBI and digital experts to review movement data in the area where the murder occurred. Cameras at the dormitory gates and intersections around the jogging track were extracted between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Among the dozens of people appearing on the cameras, one image attracted particular attention. It was a young man wearing a gray shirt and a hood, walking slowly around the blocks in the University Village area the night before the incident. The recording time was 11:48 p.m. on February 21st, just a few hours before Laken disappeared. He stopped several times observing apartment windows, with behavior marked as peeping, meaning peeping. Some students had previously reported a strange man appearing near the female student area, but there were no specific clues. Through the camera, the man's image was compared to an internal database. Police quickly identified him: Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26, a Venezuelan national who illegally entered the United States through the southern border in 2022. He was living unregistered in an apartment rented by his younger brother near campus. The next morning, Athens police conducted an administrative check at Ibarra's residence. He did not resist when invited to the station for clarification. During a search of the apartment, they found an unemptied garbage bag containing a gray jacket and a pair of cloth gloves, both stained with blood. Blood samples were immediately sent for testing. That same day, when preliminary test results showed that the blood matched that of Laken Riley, the police formally arrested Jose Antonio Ibarra, indicting him on the first charge: suspicion of first-degree murder. At the police station, Ibarra was initially cooperative. He admitted to being in the Oconee area that morning, but claimed he was just out for a walk. During the first interview, Ibarra said he didn't know anyone named Laken Riley and denied any involvement. However, during the second round of questioning, when confronted with the camera footage and the location of the victim's phone, his testimony began to contradict. At times, he said he was home, and at other times, he said he had fallen asleep in the park because he was drunk. These changes further raised suspicions of a cover-up. The investigators used psychological tactics, showing that Ibarra was the person who had been indisputably identified by a faint fingerprint on Laken's iPhone screen. Evidence obtained through digital analysis. Small cuts on Ibarra's hand were also used to suggest a struggle, and DNA testing was also used. When informed of the DNA match with the sample collected under the victim's fingernails, Ibarra's face changed color. However, he remained silent for hours, neither admitting nor denying. The twist came when police retrieved data from Laken's Garmin smartwatch. The device accurately recorded his movement parameters, heart rate, and the time when it suddenly stopped working. That time, 9:28 a.m., coincided with the time when security cameras recorded Ibarra leaving the campus and entering a deserted road near the woods. The digital team also discovered that the Bluetooth signal from Laken's iPhone had connected to Ibarra's phone within a radius of less than 2 meters. Additional evidence confirming that the two were very close to each other during the time of the incident. The decisive step was a search warrant for the trash bin of the apartment complex where Ibarra lived. There, investigators found bloodstains on the left glove, the inner jacket, and the medical mask. All had Laken Riley's DNA. After nearly 96 hours of continuous investigation, the case file was completed with key evidence. DNA matched the victim's fingernails, and blood on Ibarra's clothing. Ibarra's fingerprints were on Laken's phone. Security cameras recorded the suspect's suspicious movements before and after the murder. Garmin and Bluetooth data confirmed physical interaction between the two devices. Police charged Jose Antonio Ibarra with a total of 10 criminal charges, including malice murder, felony murder, kidnapping with bodily harm, assault with a weapon with intent to commit rape, intentionally blocking an emergency call, and peeping Tom. The investigation was concluded by forwarding the entire case file to the prosecutor's office to prepare for trial, and now justice for Laken Riley is just beginning to enter its decisive phase. On November 15, 2024, the trial of Jose Antonio Ibarra officially opened in Clark County Courthouse, Georgia. Notably, the defendant waived his right to a jury trial. Instead, he requested a bench trial, where the verdict would be delivered in person by Judge Patrick H. Haggard. The courtroom was packed and tense from the start. The prosecutor presented a strong case. From DNA evidence, fingerprints, digital data, to testimony about prior stalking. One of the most haunting details was when the prosecutor played the recording of the 911 emergency call. The sound echoed through the speakers. Gasps, hurried footsteps, then silence. At that moment, Allison Phillips, the victim's mother, burst into tears. No one in the courtroom could keep calm. Ibarra's defense attorney attempted to argue that the incident was not premeditated murder, but this argument was quickly dismissed by the completeness and consistency of the evidence. After just 4 days of trial, on November 20th, Judge Haggard found Jose Antonio Ibarra guilty of all 10 counts and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. The defendant's actions were cruel, deliberate, and intolerable in a civilized society, he stated. The verdict immediately created a wave of public opinion. Locals expressed outrage and called for tighter immigration enforcement. For them, justice had been served for Laken Riley, but at a painful price. Laken Riley is no more. A young girl with a warm heart and a bright future has gone forever just because of a normal jog. Something she did every morning. The family lost a daughter, friends lost a friend, and society lost a good citizen, a future nurse on the way to serve the community. Behind the heavy sentence is an unfillable void. This case not only shocked Athens, but also made the whole U.S. look back at the loopholes in the system, from immigration management, public security, to ensuring personal safety in public places. The question is not only who did it, logically, but also why did it happen? The social message could not be clearer. Vigilance is never too much. Technology, like GPS tracking devices and smartwatches, has helped solve the case, but more importantly, it has been a wake-up call for women to be safe, especially in places that seem the safest, like school campuses. And finally, we wonder, if the legal system had worked more effectively, if warnings from earlier irregularities had been acted upon promptly, would Laken still be alive? Would a bright future have been cut short by indifference? Laken's story is more than just a heartbreaking one. It is a reminder of the fragility of human life, of the value of justice, and of the responsibility each of us bears, not just to remember, but to act.